Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Women in Sports Wednesdays. I'm your host, Sydney Del Contivo, and today we got a super special guest on the podcast. But first, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my co-host for this episode. Thomas Bland is going to be co-hosting with me today. Thomas, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
Awesome. Looking forward to another great episode. And know we've got a really special guest with us today. Our guest today is Kristen O'Rourke, who is a CEO and founder of the Consultant, which is a consulting group that she started for field hockey players. So, Kristen, thanks so much for coming on. And how are you doing?
Thank you guys for having me. I'm doing great. I'm just trying to stay out of this heat, but at the same time enjoying that vitamin D.
Awesome. Love it. Kristen, I just wanted to kind of start by asking you what some of your whys were for wanting to work in sport, play field hockey, specifically coach field hockey. Kind of go back to the beginning for us and give us some insight into where your sports career started.
Yeah. As I've been thinking on this a bit, I'm coming back full circle back to, childhood me and how I operate as a coach is a bit different than kind of standard cookie cutter coaching. For me, sport was I had some kind of like loss in the family when I was really young. And so social situations were tough for me. And sport was an opportunity to socialize with a common goal and to interact with my environment in like a safe way where I could learn more about myself. I could get those positive social interactions and I could move my body and get out of my head. So that, as a little kid, that's just something I felt alive doing. And I was just competitive. I have two brothers and middle child of those guys. And I don't like to lose when it comes to them and have a little bit of a Napoleon issue with them. They're much bigger than me. But yeah, so field hockey, I played a number of sports. I thought I loved softball, which I still do. But then all my friends were playing field hockey. And my coach at the time, my softball coach at the time was like, hey, we need a goalkeeper. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, good. I don't have to run. Got me there. And, I put on the pads and I just immediately loved it because the motivation there was less about look at me and what I can do. And it's like, how can I deny these people what they want? And it was like very like strategic, tactical, and it was a great way for me to help my teammates in an individual way. My mom always described it as individual sport within a team sport. So I actually ended up stepping away from that in high school because I'm like, I don't even like this. And then it was a tough environment with the coaches and had a dream randomly and decided I wanted to play in college and made it happen. And that's the start of the journey.
Awesome. I love that you kind of highlighted some of your experiences, especially as a goalkeeper and what it takes to and what it took for you to really find that early passion for field hockey and how you got hooked on it. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Thomas to talk about some of your early experiences in your education as you kind of got started with your career.
Thank you, Sydney. So you obviously went to college and went to the illustrious James Madison University. I was wondering if you could talk about your sports management degree that you got from James Madison University. What was that like? And knowing just how tough that school is, what was it like to get a degree from James Madison University?
It's wild looking back because they've done some incredible things. I think it's in the Hart School of Management as well. And at the time, I was still trying to figure out who I was and just trying to survive. I think all my friends were doing business school, and I think I missed the GPA by like 0.02. And I was like, guess I'll just do sports management. It was awesome. I mean, at the time, this was like pre 2010, they had fantastic instructors, and I think it's only gotten better. I do regret not like I was very invested in field hockey. Very invested. I mean, we were very successful. But if I could go back, I would take advantage of a lot of the resources that were offered. So like to a lot of students that are in sport and rec management or that are looking to break into that, especially if you are a current student athlete, take advantage of what school provides you. Because in the real world, like you're asking for an internship, you're giving your time and your money to do that. But if school's like already providing it, you should definitely do it. But no, JMU, it's funny because when I was getting recruited, there was a range of schools in one of them was Cornell, and Cornell and James Madison are just two like very different schools. But JMU provided that, like there were some gaps in my development as a human, and JMU seemed to provide just this perfect social environment to take myself to the next like evolution of me. I love JMU. I'm dying to get back.
Well, I, they're listening, so you might, you never know. A little diving more into JMU, and do you have any like professor that just kind of mentored you, or that you want to that kind of helped you through the sports management program? That I'm just curious, since it is such a good program, um, just curious.
I was actually, I mean, I was such a mess in college. I'm not gonna lie that it was really just me falling and getting back up. I did an internship spring semester of my last year. Nora McGuire White. She's just been like instrumental in the soccer program in Shenandoah Valley, Harrisonburg. And, I was in a really tough chapter of life, just trying to figure out what was next. And she just had so much grace and gave me space and assignments to help me kind of grow at my own speed. And that has been like my MO is it's never been cookie cutter. It's always going to be, harkens back to like a childhood thing, like you can buy it, but I won't wear it. And so that whole phrase was when I was a little kid, my mom and my aunt would always try to get me to wear a dress. And they were like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's so whatever. I'm like, that's great. Y'all like it. I'm like 4. And I'm like, you listen, y'all can buy it, but I will not wear it. So that kind of goes back to my experience of there are the traditional paths that people took, and a lot of the kids utilizing the resources going through the sport and recreation at JMU. And then there's me of like, I'm trying to figure myself out, and I'm going to pick and choose these bits of what are being provided to me at the speed that I'm at. So I'm super grateful for the opportunity to digest that in the space I was in.
You bring up a good point that I want our listeners all to hear is that you don't, and in life, and especially when you're in school and stuff, you don't do the traditional thing. Go what you believe you need to do. Take what you get from your teachers and go your route. So I think you're a great example of, you know, you took what you learned, but you didn't let others decide what you were going to do. And, obviously you're, in my opinion, because you know me, but a huge success. So I wanted to move on to another question I had for you. Obviously you've had a huge career at many schools and as an assistant coach in field hockey, you just to name a few, U of R, or University of Richmond, Davidson College, Yale, and Columbia. What did those experiences teach you being at such very big time schools in coaching?
It's I'm so grateful for my coaching journey. Like I actually never that was never my intended career. I didn't really have one. As a little kid, the whole goal was for me and my brother to get to college, and just with unprocessed things, I just couldn't imagine a life after college. So that made it very difficult to like make a plan. So getting into coaching was like my little spaceship, my little incubator of like, how do I enter into the real world and start to learn these skills through the safety of something that I know that I'm good at and that I can continue to grow at my own pace to then be able to like take on the next level. And each school that I've been at has been the next chapter, or the next most interesting thing. Like so grateful that fresh out of college, I had volunteer assistant role at University of Richmond. Granted, it did last a little bit longer than in the volunteer way. So a piece of advice I'd give is like certainly, take what the opportunities you get, but understand where you may be taking an L financially. Because I was providing a lot more value than I was taking in, and it took me some time to kind of dig out of that. But for that chapter of life, it was fantastic, and that set the groundwork for kind of the prototype of the ideal goalkeeper. That it gave me a mission and a focus coming out of college. Of we wanted this freshman goalkeeper that was like blue chip to be an All-American, and that was my singular sight, and we got there. And then after that was accomplished, it was like, oh gosh, now what? So I like tried to flee coaching. Davidson got me for a season. And I was like, okay, we did some great work here too with Emily Latham. She was fantastic. And then I took a cross country road trip, tried to find myself, whatever. Did some club coaching all over the place. And I still remember being on an island off of Texas, and Pam Stupper, she was the coach at Yale at the time, and shot me a text. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I have no clue." And she's like, "How about you come on up and you work for me?" And I'm like, "Yale? Like, I'm this kid from Williamsburg. Like, I don't know anything about the Ivy League. The furthest north I've really been has been like Pennsylvania and occasionally Jersey. That's like scared me." But I was like, you know what? Let's Why not? Let's do it. And what an incredible experience! Like, I within the first week, I was in the Yale Club in New York City, interacting with the alums that had like created the program at Yale, and it's been around. They celebrated their 50 years um, of field hockey a couple years back, and it's just the things that these super successful women went through was just astounding because they didn't have everything given to them. They had to fight for everything, and now even from this point of success, the way that they give back to the program and they care. So it was just a completely different experience once I entered in the Ivy League. Like, I wasn't in coaching for the X's and the O's. Like, I'd already, accomplished with Richmond, with Davidson, with the club programs. Like, I'd already moved these kids up and through USA development stuff. Like, it wasn't about what can I do, what can I learn, and how can I grow. So my time at Yale was super awesome. And then skin got a little bit tight, and I was like, something's calling me. I'm terrified of New York City. I should probably go there. And so Columbia was always intended to be my last stop. And it was incredible. Like, between the alums, the current students, the parents, and even the vendors that work with the program. I've just learned and grown so much from those different experiences.
Wow, that's incredible. Just incredible story and just amazing. I wanted to ask you another question. You launched the KO Consulting Group in 2013. Can you tell me a little bit about that and that being probably a big launching point for you?
I mean, again, it's like what you think it would be. And then with me, I'm just like kind of the opposite. 2013 was roughly around the time of when I was at University of Richmond. I was like, crap, this is unsustainable financially for me. I need to figure out how to leverage what I've shown to be good at into some kind of financial benefit for me. So I started that. I branched out more with, I was running like a 23 team tournament at their field. And then I liaised with USA Field Hockey with their umpire development training, which was really cool. And just that was just like a step into doing something for myself. But I realized at the time I wasn't ready to take on things for myself. But it wasn't until this about a year ago, year and a half ago in New York, where I stepped out from behind serving everybody else and was training at this Krav Maga gym. And I was doing something and achieving something for myself. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And the thing that was like really hard, but it's something I'm just going to be running with, and it's why I kind of rebranded the consultant and moving away from traditional Division One. Was when I showed up to this Krav gym. I'm like, this was for my mental health. When I first moved to New York, it was so overwhelming. It was a lot, and I was like, let me just go to this gym and fly under the radar and just get a good workout in. But I have ADHD, and so like processing like patterns and directions, like I have to be right there front and center to just and give it my best shot. So I was always at Bob One, which is like the dummy hanging there. And so I'm right where the instructor was. And, I'd come in and I'd apply the same, work rate and effort that I have like my whole life. And, people would start to come up to me and be like, man, I really wanted to quit, but I'm like super inspired by like, you were just absolutely like this girl's ripped and she's still going at it and she's still working hard. And I was like, that makes me feel super special. Because there were single moms, there were models, there were people high up in like financial tech stuff. Like it didn't matter. We were all literally fighting for our lives. But the pressure came when we had to level up. And I'm not somebody who collects trophies or a badge or like, you did this. I don't care. I care about doing the job. But I knew there was finally the pressure of eyes on me. I've always chosen that assistant coach role because I didn't have the eyes on me, so I could do the job and not have to worry about it. But now, without me deciding that the case, is I was like a leader whether I wanted to be or not. And so it forced me into being something bigger than myself because people were expecting it, and that their own like their development in what would cause them to choose something more for themselves. Like if I was going to show up scared or something that I was clearly very capable of doing, what is that going to tell them who is very scared and looking up to me? So once I went through all the hurdles of that, I was like, it's time to move on to the next step.
Well, thank you so much for that. I'm going to pass it back on to Sydney. You've been incredible. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks,
Thomas.
Thomas. Yeah, I loved hearing about those experiences, Kristen, and sort of just what you gained from those, the lessons, the good, the bad, and the ugly about yourself and your work and who you are as a person as well. I think that was really insightful, and I think that's something that people can gain a lot from, right? Like learning just who you are as a person is such a big thing, and it contributes wholeheartedly to who you are as an employee, as a coach, as a leader, as a boss. Who you are on the inside is what will reflect out on the outside. So, I love the insight that you had there, and so I just kind of wanted to get in some women in sports specific questions for you, Kristen, and just kind of wondering who some of those early female role models were for you. You mentioned a couple of coaches that you worked with throughout your career, and just wondering, again, who some of those people were for you early on that contributed to your development and also to just who you became as a coach, as a consultant, and now, just as someone who works in sports.
You know, I think it goes way back to as a little kid. The iconic Nike sports bra, like World Cup, seeing just this. It wasn't even about women. I mean, it was about women, but it was like literally these women, they won and they didn't care. They weren't like, what's the appropriate thing to do? She was celebrating raw. She didn't care what the optics looked like. And, I was super young, but I was like, I don't know what that is, but that's so cool. And that's the passion that I feel. And you're seeing that resurgence of women's sports right now, which is so cool because we bring a level of passion and interest that is so palpable to not just other women, but men, boys, young girls. So there's the World Cup, and then always as a little kid, Women's College World Series, just like packed it in. It's you have all this passion and intensity, but it's high performance. Like you can't just be all crazy and chaotic. Like you have to do your job. So again, that in the Olympics like calls to the part of you that wants to perform, and it awakens that voice inside. That's like, I want to be more. I want to be better. So there really wasn't a specific. I'm not really easily led. I think we're getting like that vibe. So there wasn't somebody that I was like, oh, I want to be. I'm going to follow you. It was more like I'm going to follow that voice inside, and you know, one person is, Pam Stuper, where I came in and I was very fantastic at the position that I was in. That was the only specific value I had. Pam had been at Yale for over 20 years and she'd been doing work with USA Field Hockey, like just an absolute like icon. And I'm like, wow, she wants to work with me. And just, the grace and in the hard work and the grit that her and my colleague at the time, Jeff Barnett, who's now at Iowa, like we just grew so much together. So like just the willingness to be these big personalities, to be so developed in our specific areas, but have this space to really learn from each other. It's been fantastic. But I would have to say, honestly, the most impactful would be my Columbia kids. We went through a lot of challenges, and it's a lot as an Ivy League kid. There's something different, and then an Ivy League kid that chooses New York City. These kids are so gifted, but it's in New York. It doesn't matter. Like you still hustle, you still work your butt off, and they were so humble. And we really came together through like just a lot of shared challenges. And I'll always, if I see any of them in the professional world, on the street, anywhere, there's just always going to be such a huge amount of respect. So I'd have to say the number one influence has been the athletes that I've coached. They've helped me grow.
I love that answer, and I love that, you seem to be such an others focused person, and I feel that that's such a common characteristic that a lot of coaches have. It's about the team, it's about the athletes, it's about, the people that they're interacting with on a daily basis. It's not just about them, and I think that's such a honorable characteristic to have. And so, pulling on that thread a little bit, and then also you mentioned earlier on just some of your values. It's very clear that you have a really strong work ethic, and you're someone that strives to, like you, to your own point, care about the work and care about the job itself, not necessarily the achievements that can come from it. So I'm wondering for you, Kristen, what were some of those impactful traits that you possess that you think really catapulted you to where you are today, that you think other women who want to break into the industry should have?
Great question. I think the first basis would just be super mission focused. I mean, even at a time where I didn't fully exist to myself, um, or even have any kind of a confidence, there was a competence. And so when it was like when I couldn't see value in who I was as a person, I knew factually that, okay, I can do this and I'll start here. And it's like that tiny bit of math instead of trying to be like, am I all these other things? It's just keep on adding bits to that math and then the confidence grows. And I've always been very intrinsically motivated and like confident from the inside because I've just kind of known like if somebody gives you something, they can take it away. So I've not really cared much for what other people think because it's giving your power away. And I have no interest in that. Um, so yeah, the first one being mission focused. And I think that's just so important because it takes like you out of it. And it's not necessarily like, oh, I want to be selfless. It's no, it's just the job is the job. We can, you other elements can come in, but like if this is your task, let's stay focused on what the actual task is. Um, and it comes back to like when you're problem solving, just keep on asking like what is the original intent of a mission? I think with goalkeeping, there's so many voices in it, and get like a little sidetracked. I'm like, how do you make the best highlight reel goalkeeper? I'm like, okay, but that doesn't win you games. That doesn't do the job. And so because I was mission focused, like all the accolades for my goalkeepers, like it just comes in place. I'm not trying to be like, ooh, how do we get attention? We don't care about that. We care about the job. Um, the other piece is like the willingness and the desire to evolve. Because it's just you're not the world is constantly changing around you. And when you're in sport, there's conflict. You're either trying to be better than yourself if it's an individual sport, or you're literally going against somebody else who is constantly trying to figure out a different strategy around you. So if you don't have that flexible mindset, they're gonna beat you, and it's kind of your own fault for not like allowing yourself to expand. So that desire for evolution in the that's palpable to your student athletes as well. And what that does is that gives them permission to evolve too. And that was something I learned like later in my career. I was like pretty rigid in the beginning, and we got the results, we got the groundwork done. But again, when you're working with these Ivy kids and they're just questioning everything, you gotta find a way to lead that horse to water, and make them want to drink that water and to continue drinking on their own. And let's see, I love to problem solve. Problems irritate me. And like if you ever saw me in season, I'd be like, oh, put down another fire. But really, when I set my mind to whatever the specific task is, the thing I want to do, I want the table clear of the distractions. I want to be able to do this thing. And as we know, the table is never clear. There is always something. So that's how I was able to move goalkeeping from just like the X's and the O's into expanding a much further complete knowledge of field hockey as a game, of coaching in general, and just like my role in life in general was like, how do I stabilize the situation to get this specific outcome? And then it just, in my efforts to control that, it just expanded into significant evolution.
Yeah, I love those responses and those, skills and traits that you possess. I think, again, very clear in some of your early responses, again, who you are as a person, who you were as a coach, and, what you strive to be for your athletes and for yourself. So I love that. And I know earlier we touched on some of the obstacles that you faced, like moving to New York and, the challenges that that brought, and, some of the things that you faced throughout your career. And I don't want to necessarily backtrack and ask you about those specific experiences, but I want to just ask you for, what's some advice that you would have for a young woman who's wanting to break into the industry? What advice would you go back and give her going through either those situations or your career in general?
Yeah. I mean, it is, I'm like I had alluded to, like I'm going back and as I'm seeking to separate from that first major couple of chapters or that first book of my life, I'm going back and it's kind of like a post-match eval. Like looking back at me like, okay, what did we learn? And one of the things that until I became this like future version of me, I because I wasn't into like medals and accolades and all that stuff, like doors weren't opening. And I allowed other people to dictate my worth, like on paper and taking away opportunities. And so, in my head, I'm like, I didn't give them the power over me, like how I felt about myself, but it does impact you subconsciously. It's when you give away that power, even if you're like, no, like my confidence comes from what I've done. When you betray yourself in ways in allowing other people to define you, that is a message you're subconsciously sending yourself. And so once I came to that realization, I was like, oh no, we need to stop that. So I think it is like name your win, and not in a look at me kind of a way, but in a like you to yourself, like be future you and be like, girl, I saw you struggling. I saw you come through this. Like you, it doesn't feel good right now, but you did this thing, and then just like put a bookmark there. But when it comes to especially just like with the job market and how people are interacting socially today, as I'm looking to kind of hop tracks from coaching into like sport business, I really wish that I wish that I had been more like win focused or more like, I mean, I was win focused in terms of like outcomes, but in terms of just like, how do I leverage this to make me look better to get a job? Because it never was about me besides like my growth. And I think I would recommend, which I think a lot of other people have a healthy dose of like, how can this help me? If I were to tell myself, I'd be like, you always knew that this wasn't what you fully intended to do for the rest of your life. Use that time. Yes, you're growing in the moment, but get your eyes up. And it kind of goes back to, I love anecdotes, but I was on a random trip to Costa Rica and I was learning to surf, and I was struggling because I was wanted to make sure my feet were doing the right thing. So I was kept my eyes down, and she's like, you're not going to go anywhere if your eyes are down. You got to get your eyes forward. And that's been something that, challenges that I've placed in my own ways have been so mission focused. My eyes have been down doing the thing that I haven't had my eyes forward. But now it's eyes are up, eyes are forward.
I love that, kind of keeping your focus on the prize, right? That old saying. I think that that's great, and it's important to yes, be narrow-minded and be focused, but I think not in a sense that pigeonhole yourself. And so I like that you took some time to highlight that, and I think that those are all kind of great pieces of advice for women who want to break into the industry. So that's all wonderful. So I just wanted to kind of pivot here, Kristen, as we get ready to wrap up, and ask you some lighthearted questions, kind of get to know you and your personality a little bit here. So. I know that, obviously we talked a lot about your time in New York early on and that sort of thing. I love a good, New York food spot, some pizza, some Italian food. So give me your like top New York food joints.
Oh my gosh. The whole I love food and I love pizza. Like I grew up on Ninja Turtles. So like all pizza is beautiful, but definitely New York pizza and New Haven pizza is delightful. Um Lindis I don't want to butcher it, and I even took high school French, but Lindistry, I think they have it in Brooklyn. That's pretty good. Um any kind of like wood fired oven pizza, to me, the food was about the experiences around it. So all like New York generally does not have bad food. Like you're not gonna laugh if you have bad food. So it's gonna be less on a this place is awesome. Although there was a ramen place. I lived on 125th and Broadway with like two younger guys that were just like it was the best way to enter New York because I was so overwhelmed. And it was like two guys that were just like party, and I'm like, okay, this is a lot. But they introduced me to like late night ramen and just like some really the coffee truck out front where you can get these giant croissants for like two. But everything in New York is expensive, but like that little coffee carts you can get like really good pastries for super cheap. Um, Honestly, now you got me missing it. I had spent the last year in Texas, so that's kind of erased my New York vibe. Um, yeah, pizza, coffee, ice cream, everywhere.
New York does have some great food and some great street cart food as well. Love a good New York kind of coffee cup. So that's awesome, and love that that is all pizza is beautiful. That warms my heart more than you know. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to Thomas and see if he has any fun questions for you here.
Oh, I absolutely do, and we're gonna keep it on with the food, not necessarily the food, but the travel. You talked earlier about going cross country and all that kind of thing. I was wondering, what has been your favorite travel spot? Could be the cross country or just in general. What has been your favorite? It could be town, city, just obviously you like New York, but what could be just some place that you just fell in love with that you just maybe just passed through even?
You
Long
know,
question,
it's
I know.
great question. Kind of like the food question is to me, it's about like what I'm feeling, experiencing in life in that moment. Drawing it kind of even back to the theme of the podcast, just like sports, I've had the opportunity to travel through sport, like to Holland, to Ireland, my cross everywhere in the U.S. I mean, recently USA Hockey would just like fly me to go select. I'm like, thank you guys. This is fun because I don't have the funds to do it myself. Costa Rica, I would do again in a heartbeat, and not just like the beaches part, but I just took a chance and was like, let's do this jeep thing up into the mountains, and where I'm like, I might die out here. It was like, you just like, Jesus, take the wheel. And it was just so raw and so real. And to watch the sunset, and these random dogs coming up, that was great. And then a sunrise on my cross country road trip, I was with my dog at the time, and I was in like Utah, and we just took a nap at a rest stop when I woke up, it was like heaven. Like the air was like deliciously crisp. Like it was gorgeous and stunning. And I was like, there's nothing exciting, nothing crazy happening, but I was like, this moment is perfect. Um, so yeah, I think it's just anywhere that makes you feel super alive. And like, for me, at least, like very in my body and like sensory.
Well, thank you. I think that's just perfect right there. I'm gonna pass it back to Sydney.
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, I love that. Utah seems like a great place, and it's on my bucket list as Zion National Park. So, just love that that was kind of your answer there. Well, so Kristen, as we get ready to wrap up here, I'm just wondering for you, what's the best way if our listeners want to get in touch with you, continue the conversation? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Ooh. I'd probably say Instagram. The consultant, I should post a lot more on that than I do. It's well, I'll share it with you guys, but for people to know, it's THE_KONSULTANT. And that's just got like a little bit of what I do with field hockey. And it oddly like branched off into like recruiting consulting, which is not really the direction I want to go in, but it's something. That or just my general Instagram, OKKO with OKAYYYKO. And you can see some of my travels there as well.
Awesome. And we will leave Kristen's handles in the description of the podcast. So thanks so much for joining us on another episode of Women's Sports Wednesday.